It took me a while to really figure out what my dad did for a living. What my dad did was he was an associate producer on the Mickey Mouse Club, Zorro, all those TV shows of that era. And I think I really started to glean what my dad did when he used to bring home films on a weekend. So he'd bring home 16 millimeter prints of Bambi, uh, gosh, all kinds of stuff. All of those films that you know and love. And I remember particularly loving 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was a really, sort of a brand new kind of film back in the day. And so that was really my first sort of gleaning of what he did. He worked at a studio. He was a producer on these films. I didn't know what a producer did. But he spent 40 some odd years there, and he was there as the clapper boy on Snow White and Dumbo and a bunch of other stuff. So he was right there with Walt at the very beginning.
What was his name?
Lou Debney.
How was it that he met Walt Disney?
Well, that's a great story. My dad had to sort of quit school because of the Depression during those times. A lot of kids that were in school had to sort of quit school and get a job to help support their families. So my dad did that. He was 15 years old. He had to drop out of school, and he started to sell newspapers on the corner of Prospect and Franklin, somewhere right in there in Hollywood. And lo and behold, one day, this certain guy would drive up every morning and buy a paper from my dad. He nicknamed my dad Whitey because my dad has shocking blonde hair. And so he would say, "Hey, Whitey, I'll take a LA Times," or whatever it was, or a Herald or something. And that was Walt Disney. So every day for about a year, Walt Disney would stop, buy a paper from my dad, and my dad would invariably every day ask for a job. And lo and behold, one day, I think about a year later, my dad was probably 16 or so, Walt said, "Hey, kid, you know what? We're going to be opening up a bigger place. And it's right down the street. It's on Hyperion Street. And why don't you come down there? Work for me. We'll get you started." And that's how it started. So my dad literally was one of the first. I've looked at his employment contract, and literally he was one of the 4 or 5 key players on Snow White. He was the clapper boy. He was the facilitator. He was kind of he'd be the one running dailies back and forth or sketches back and forth. So he was on this really short list of people. So he went from there, got a job with Walt, and spent his whole career there, 40 some odd years.
Sort of moving up the ladder and eventually
moving
becoming
up the ladder.
A producer eventually.
He became a producer eventually, yeah. My dad, sort of knowing that I had a musical aptitude back then, and I must have been about 9 or so, my dad just on a whim asked his good friend Richard Sherman and his brother Robert if they'd mind if his son, who likes music a lot, could meet them and sit in with them one day.
And who were the Sherman Brothers?
Sherman Brothers were, most people will know what they've written. Mary Poppins, Small World, the list is endless. Every song that we've all known and loved over the years, pretty much Disney-wise, was written by the Sherman Brothers in that golden era. So they were already very storied and very famous, and so I spent a day with them. And I sat in the room with them, and Dick plays the piano, and his brother Bob is more of the lyricist, or was more of the lyricist, God bless him. And I sat there enthralled as they're banging out things and yelling at each other and trying to find the right rhymes. And I think they invited me to lunch, and I went to lunch, and I was very shy kid. And Dick loves to tell the story because I said 2 words during the whole day. And yes, no, yes, sir, no, sir. And that, honestly, looking back, was like I think the first moment where I really sort of felt the spark of magic, that I wanted to do something like these guys do. Didn't know what it was at that point, but I was really struck by it. And, it hit me deep inside.